Over the past weekend, we had two pretty big events. We had the Japanese National Championships, which consisted of 64 Masters, 64 Seniors, and 64 Juniors players. We will be going over the top 8 for this event, but we also had the Bologna. I apologize if I'm missaying that, but this was a special event over in Italy that had almost 900 players, so pretty damn impressive, right? So two pretty big events. Obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, we are a week away from the the North American International Championships, one of the biggest events of the year, if not the second or third biggest. Which will be the last major event as well before the World Championship. So that is very cool. And yeah, this is really our last chance to kind of see what everyone is doing, I guess, the week before the final event prior to World. So pretty important time right now in VGC. I will say one thing here though, unfortunately, oh, actually they do have it here. Perfect. I was going to say, I didn't think they had this, at least at the time when I was leaving work, but PokeAlex did cover these as well. The open team sheets and whatnot and all these teams. So I will say a shout out to him, but it looks like, yeah, this wasn't here like an hour ago. Apparently it's here now. Thank you Victory Road. But really cool here, we do see the top 8 teams right now. The important thing here is with these open team sheets, at least before we jump into the teams, you will notice that they should have natures on this. Yep, so you can see the natures. So really weird, but for the Japanese event here, so you can see here it is a double elimination bracket, best of 1 before top 8, right? And then best of 3 for top 8 onwards. Closed teams list before top 8. So before top 8, it's closed team sheets. But then when you're in top 8, it is open team sheets, plus you get their natures. So absolutely wild here. I don't understand how you can go from best of 1 closed sheet to best of 3 open team sheet, plus you get natures. Shout out to whoever in Japan actually decides that. Absolutely insane. The whole event is not run on the exact same format, but it is what it is. But regardless, we see some pretty cool teams here with some very interesting Pokemon, getting good results, right? Obviously, the first thing I see here is a Iron Valiant in second place. Kind of crazy. We see some Volcaronas here. There's actually 2 of them. We see 2 Chiyus here in the top 8 as well. We see a Lunala and a Dawnwings, which is also kind of crazy. We see a triple Dark team here as well that has Umbreon and Iron Jugulus, which again, really, really cool. We kind of see like a 2-2-2 Dozo that just doesn't have the Qian power. Like, it's got the D-Knight, no power. So some really interesting stuff, right? Also, as well, 2 Iron Hands as well. Iron Hands is on the rise again. I don't know. I went away for holidays. I come back. Iron Hands is apparently everywhere. But one super interesting thing I noticed before we actually jump into the teams here is there is not a single Incineroar in top 8. Which is absolutely wild, because when we look at the special event, there's 6 of them in the top 8. But yes, no Incineroars in the top 8 here, which I thought was absolutely crazy, right? Anyway, first of all, we'll take a look at this first team here. So this was a really interesting team, right? I had a quick look at it. Unfortunately, we're missing some sprites here, but it is what it is. That is the nature here of the old Pokepaste. But we see a Terapagos here, modest nature, which I expected. I think all Terapagos should be modest. Specs maybe can go timid, but if you're not Specs, probably run modest. But this one here is really interesting, right? So Terra Starstorm, obvious, right? Then we have the Power Herb Meteor Beam set, really interesting. Obviously a way to boost up your special attack. But then you just have Rock Polish. And let's be honest, once this Monteras, it probably only wants to click Terra Starstorm. So I love the idea of having, the Amoonguss and the Iron Hand to help you get up the Rock Polish and the Meteor Beam. And then at that point, you potentially +2, you just start running through, right? Really, really strong. That's a really cool set. I do really like this. I think that's a really cool tech. And honestly, that is one of those things where, like, in closed team sheet in particular, super scary, right? If you don't know you're going up against a Meteor, like a Meteor Beam Rock Polish set, I'm sure that just like caught people off guard in the best of 1. Really, really cool, right? We see a Sash Shifu here with Terra Grass, pretty standard. We've got the Fluttermane here, Jolly Nature. Again, we know this is probably just Jolly Max, obviously. Very, very standard set here. The Fluttermane I thought was super interesting here, because as you can see, right, we've got the Moonblast, obviously the main stab move. We are boost to speed by the looks of it. We know that because it's timid nature. And then it has Icy Wind, Trick Room, and Taunt, right? So boost to speed, Icy Wind is good. Especially when you look at the top 3 monsters here in particular, right? We can assume that these 2 in particular are both max speed. I would assume the Terapagos has a fair amount of speed, right? I'm sure there are certain things like, for example, a Scarfed Urshifu that it wants to outspeed at +2, right? So that is, I'm assuming, why the Icy Wind is there, right? Obviously helps out a lot. But then we also have the Trick Room, which is also really good for the more bulky defensive mode, right? Because again, there is going to be like these balance modes where you're playing Terapagos paired up with Gus and Iron Hands, and Trick Room really benefits that mode, right? Because the Terapagos probably has a bit of speed investment. It's probably not going to be that fast, right? So a really, really cool tech here. Again, seeing Calm Nature as well on the Amoonguss, very interesting. I thought a lot of people were running, bulky on the physical end. But looks like potentially running it on the special end now. and of course a pretty standard, AV set here for Iron Hands. So a really, really cool team, right? One thing I'll actually also kind of throw out there, if you guys are interested, I do plan on hopefully recreating all of these teams, at least in paste over the next couple of days. So look out for that in the next day or two, depending when I find the time to do it. I will chuck out a video with all 8 of these teams, and I'll spread the team. So if you're interested in that, obviously stick around, hit the subscribe button, and check it out. Yeah. Anyway, second team here, really, really interesting. Once again, Calyrex-Ice, just falls short getting second place here. But regardless, a really cool team, obviously with Speed, Booster, Iron Valiant. Really interesting, because a lot of people would be like, why not just run Flutter Mane, right? Flutter Mane kind of does the exact same thing this guy does, just a little bit better, right? But it gets to stable, which is obviously very, very good for any choice lock one, right? So Urshifu's obviously, if you get him with the choice scarf, it's very, very good. Of course, Specs Miraidon, Specs Terrapagoses. Basically, any choice item mon does not want to be in an endgame against his Iron Valiant, which I do think is really cool. And we do actually see a little bit of this as we go through some more of these teams later on, where we are seeing things like the Screamtails popping up again with the booster into speed plus disable. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind. But yeah, a pretty cool team here. This is more of a balanced Calyrex-Ice team by the looks of it. We do see Adamant, Terra Fire here with Seed Bomb Crunch as your coverage moves with the AV. There is another AV set as well. We'll look at it a little later that I also think is really cool. But yeah, this is just a really fun looking team, right? We've got the Modest Pelipper here with Covered Cloak. Of course, we've got the Cornerstone Ogerpon, Jolly, assuming it's just Max. Thank you, Adobe, for ruining the recording. We also have Urshifu Rapid Strike. Again, we're seeing the Japanese love this, the Sash plus the Terra Grass. And then a really interesting one as well, which is the Life Orb Raging Bolt. Magnet has definitely been picking up a lot recently, but this guy obviously is opted for the, the Life Orb, which is really interesting. I'm assuming there's probably some Draco Meteor calcs in particular that you want that for. Yeah, still a really cool team. Obviously, seeing, some support mons like Pelipper and Iron Valiant, getting more results is really cool. And honestly, Pelipper in general is just a sick mon, right? I'm a huge fan of it right now. I think it's really good, especially into, some of these Callies, right? Into both the Ghost and the Ice form. It is really, really solid, right? And then we have a team here that is, I want to say somewhat standard. This looks like a pretty, pretty normal Kyogre Rain team. But of course, the Japanese love changing up their items. Really, the only piece on this team, in my opinion, that is a little off is, of course, the Entei. But of course, Entei is very good when the team is not going for Rain, right? Entei next to Qianpao is obviously really good. Gives you a very strong Fire Water Grass core here with Rillaboom, Urshifu, and Entei. Just very, very solid. Of course, Qianpao pairs up incredibly well with all 3 of them. Qianpao also likes the Rain. And of course, Tornadus Kyogre is just one of the best combos in Rain, right? Really interesting here, though. We do actually see the Kyogre running the Covet Cloak here. With Blizzard as well, which I thought was absolutely wild. Hydro Pump over Origin Pulse as well. Like, not the, not the worst thing ever, of course. Wide Guard is a thing. But yeah, really, really interesting to see these sets here. But yeah, this is kind of crazy stuff, right? We see the Life Orb Pow, Adamant with like 3 attack, running double Dark Stab, which honestly, I do think is pretty damn good. Of course, we see the Snowscape here on the Tornadus, which I also thought was like kind of wild. Like, Snowscape, no Rain Dance is like really, really sick. Especially too, because obviously it buffs up the Qianpao. We have the Miracle Seed Rillaboom here. I'm assuming this is like max attack with the it's Swords Dance max attack. Terra Normal, of course, helps out a lot with a good friend Calyrex-Shadow. And then yeah, just pretty standard sets on the bottom 2 here. Trailblaze is interesting on Entei, but it's definitely not unheard of as like a last option. Definitely good Sacrifice, Stormy Tantrum, E-Speed. Really, really solid. And of course, yeah, Trailblaze just giving you the speed boost. So this here, really, really cool team here by Nao. Yeah, that's like super, super sick. Then we also see here just a pretty standard Miraidon team. This is, nothing crazy here, honestly. Obviously, Grassland on Whimsicott is not unheard of. I do think Moonblast is maybe a little better, especially because this team doesn't have a Fairy type. But of course, I'm sure there's a specific thing that the Grassland is there for, to fix a certain matchup. Maybe, a Groudon or something like that. But yeah, the rest of the team, pretty standard. I'm pretty sure we saw a team very similar to this win an event before. Of course, the Blood Moon Ursaluna with AV is a little interesting. But not too surprising. The mod obviously does have very low special attack. Pretty standard Giraffe set here. Volcarona with Will-O-Wisp plus Helmet, I did think was really interesting. Using it as a support more than a setup mon. But yeah, Iron Hands doing what Iron Hands does best, man. It's just fake out Drain Punch, Heavy Slam, Wild Charge. Really, really good mon. And once again, seeing 2 Iron Hands in the top 4, it just shows like this mon is still good, right? It fell off a lot in Reg F, but I do think people really undervalued it because Incin was back, especially when Incin started really rising up. So seeing it getting some, good results here is really sick. We do see another team here, though, very, very similar to our second place team. Of course, another Assault Vest Cali, but this time it has Terra-Grass Trailblaze, and we do see it is a Jolly Nature. So I would assume that if this thing is not max speed, it is probably very damn near close. But yeah, really cool team here. Obviously, we do see Rain Dance plus Urshi, a Banded Urshi Rapid as well with Terra Ghost. Terra Ghost Banded Urshi is something we've been seeing rise up a lot as well. Obviously, very good into things like Incineroar, of course. Just being able to remove it on turn 1 is, of course, very, very nice. We see Tinglu here as well. Tinglu, obviously, is also very, very good with Calyrex-Ice. Just having, you know, two very bulky mon that, especially on the special side of things, take very little damage because of Vessel of Ruin. Obviously, is never a bad thing. We do see another supportive Volcarona here. Interesting enough, double Tailwind on this team is really, really cool. But again, Will-O-Wisp, you know, Rocky, Rage Powder as well, just doing what it does best. And this time, a Specs Bolt. Just a really, really sick team, right? This team here, very interesting. We actually see Sunroom just like pop up. Like, this is generally just like the standard 5 Sunroom mons that we've seen for like ages now. It's just like, you know, Lily Cole, Ursaluna, Gallade, Indeedee. And then we've just got Dawn Wings in the slot of the hat, right? Or like the expanding force mon, if you will. So yeah, really, really standard, of course. We got like Jolly, you know, the Jolly Lilligant here with Sleep Powder after you, of course, Specs, Heatwave, you know, Eruption on the Torkoal here, you know, standard as the Flame Orb Ursaluna. Of course, the Clear Amulet, Wide Guard Trick Room on the Gallade, you know, the Seed plus Follow Me Trick Room on the Indeedee. And then, of course, the, you know, the kind of the star of the show here, the extra Trick Room setup for this team, the Expanding Force, Moongeist Beam, Dawn Wings, Necrozma. So yeah, really, really cool team there. Again, it is literally just this, like what we've seen from, you know, Sunroom for basically the last like 6 months. Except they've just done a restricted in one of the E4 slots. So yeah, really, really cool there. And then the final 2 teams here we'll take a look at. Both have my guy Chiyu on it. You know, great to see Chiyu getting some good results. Yeah, this is just a balanced team, right? That's all this kind of is. We do have Calm Mind set up Lunala, which I do think is really interesting. Especially because this team doesn't really have a way to heal it up. Like, it is relying on lefties plus Rillaboom. But in saying that, obviously, of course, you know, cycling Fake Out plus Protect does heal this mon up quite a damn bit. If you do ever get back to full HP, of course, Shadow Shield is pretty damn good. Pretty standard stuff, though. Again, we're seeing the, you know, the Focus Sight here on the Urshi. We're seeing the Assault Vest, Rillabooms. We're seeing Hydreigon, Iron Jugulus as well, doing a little bit of work here, of course, you know, being the booster energy plus Tailwind setter. Does have a pretty nice typing into the current metagame. Flying is definitely nice to have, especially with a lot of these Urshis plus Rillabooms running around, right? It is nice just to have a strong stab move that really doesn't need much investment. Of course, though, Rain Dance as well to buff it up. Snarl for just, you know, great stab and, you know, just damage mitigation. And then a really interesting Umbreon set here. If you have a look, this is a Calm Nature, Foul Play, Toxic, Taunt, and Reflect. Really, really interesting. I like Umbreon as a taunt mon. I also really like it for Foul Play. Stab Foul Play in the current metagame obviously is very good into anything that is neutral, especially if it's restricted. But then we just see like Reflect Taunt, just super, super interesting. And I do think Toxic is also like really good when paired up with like Rillaboom, right? Because technically you do heal the opponent, but like after like 2 turns, they're like taking 12%, right? After regen, and then it's 18, and then it's 24. Then all of a sudden that regen just feels like nothing coming out of the Rillaboom. And of course, Chiyu, my guy, you love to see it. Modest Choice Scarf, pretty standard. I do really like actually the Will-O-Wisp last option. Very nice into things like, you know, potential pins from Qian Pao, right? If, you know, if Pao can just like pin you with like a Sucker plus like Fake Out or something, then you can just like look to fire off a Will-O-Wisp into it, right? So really, really cool here. And then the final team we'll look at from Japan here is the 222 Dozo that just doesn't have the Qian Pao but has a Miraidon instead. I really like this team here. I think Dozo is still a little underrated right now. Dozo is still good if you can get it set up in the right situation. And of course, pairing obviously Chiyu, Miraidon, and Fluttermane together is just a lot of damn damage, right? You got the speed boost of Fluttermane, obviously enabling the other 2 Pokemon here. And of course, AV Miraidon is interesting, but having Assault Vest plus Terra Fairy Gleam, I do think is pretty good. And of course, you know, Fish is just Fish. If you let Fish click its buttons, it's gonna do work. The Bandit D-Knight was really interesting, but we do see multi-scale over Inner Focus. Again, in a closed team sheet format, I do think that is really good. I'm curious to see who he actually lost to in top 8, because I feel like this is the kind of thing which was really good up until probably top 8, and it potentially cost him. But yeah, still a really, really sick team here. I do love seeing the Fish get results, and doing the top 8 in the Japanese Nationals is never a bad thing. Anyway, so jumping over to the special event over in Italy, guys, we have some pretty interesting teams. Now, unfortunately, it does look like our friends over at Victory Road here do not have anything past top 8, but of course, our guys over at Top Cut Explorer do, right? They've got all of it, you know, they're always pretty damn good. One thing I will say, especially if you have a quick glance at this, guys, the king is back. Calyrex-Shadow is absolutely everywhere. Look how many Calyrex-Shadows there are in this far left slot, boys. Very, very good. Very little Sun team. I'm kind of surprised how little Sun there is. Rain is even like, I'm never surprised to see not much Kyogre, because I think it's good, but it's definitely not as easy to play. But yeah, definitely really interesting. No Zacian. I thought maybe we'd see a little bit of Zacian picking up, especially after the last weekend. But of course, you know, the dogs here are still here. Michael Kelsch just falling short there at 9th place. Look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. This here is a travesty, man. How do these 3 players here all just miss out on top 8? That actually pains me. That pains me a lot because, like, they're 12-3. They have the same record. Like, this is why I think top 16 should all cut. Like, yeah, I get that a bunch of these 11-4s don't make it, and that's kind of sad. But, man, 12-3 not making top 8, yeah, that feels so bad. Rip Michael, you know, he had such a good showing a couple weeks ago. So to not come out and have a chance again just because he missed out on resistance is really sad. But nonetheless, we'll jump back over here and take a look at some of the tournament winning teams. So, real quick, obviously we touched on before, no Incineroars in the last event. We do actually get to see 6 here in the top 8. So Incineroar is still a really good mon. But guys, the better Fire Dark type had the better results here. 2 Chiyus in top 8, the better Incineroar, as I like to call it here. Sorry, top 8, top 2, getting 1st and 2nd place. So the fish, you love to see it. I will say, Paul Luca here, his Chiyu, not a good boy. Not a good boy, not well trained. It missed way too many moves. The Whimsicott had a really cool tech and just got crit in game 1. Really unfortunate. But nonetheless, let's jump into these teams anyway. So, this first team here, really reminiscent of Wolf's team, right? This is a more offensive version of it. You know, we kind of spoke about it, I believe, last weekend when a very similar team won. But yeah, this is just like the Cali, right? It's got its like fire, water, grass stuff. Actually, it doesn't have a water type. I just realized I said fire, water, grass. There's no water type on this team. Ignore me. The Mian Xiao, though, is kind of in the place of the Incineroar on this team in terms of the fake out one. The Chiyu here is there obviously for a little bit of instant offense. Of course, Tornadus is here for a bit of speed control. And then Rillaboom and Clef are there basically to keep the Cali safe. Because Cali, you know, he's got Terra Fairy, he's got Draining Kiss, he's got the Berry. And of course, you know, you pair that up with the Friend Guard and of course the Grassy Terrain healing. And this Cali becomes really hard to deal with. And of course, it also has Chiyu to basically give it that little bit of extra oomph if it needs, you know, a little bit of extra damage to get through a mon. But nonetheless, this is a really interesting team, right? You know, again, I've played very similar teams to this. And I love this take on it, right? We see the Water Fish, which is definitely not unheard of. It's very good defensive typing, obviously, for Chiyu. We see here double file move plus Snarl. But running Taunt on the last slot is really interesting, especially on a Cloak set. When you're not running Protect, also like not running, you know, a choice item, it is crazy to me to see no Protect. But yeah, opting for Taunt obviously would be very good, especially into certain matchups. The Trick Room ones in particular are the ones I'm thinking of. But yeah, really cool take there. Very standard, you know, set here on the Tornadus. We've already covered the Calyrex-Shadow. Of course, Mian Xiao obviously is one of the best partners for Calyrex-Shadow, covers a lot of its weaknesses and gives it a lot of the things it needs, like Wide Guard support, Fake Out support, and of course Feint to break opposing Wide Guard. We have the big Rillaboom here running a very standard set. And then finally, Clef. A friend of mine actually basically referred to Clef on these teams as like, Clef makes Calyrex-Shadow as bulky as Calyrex-Ice. Now, I don't think those numbers are that close. Like, I don't think it's as bulky as Calyrex-Ice just because it has Friend Guard. But it's definitely pretty damn close, right? Bulk isn't actually that bad. For a restricted, it's pretty poor. But of course, this mon, you know, its bulk is still, you know, as good as some, you know, non-restricted Pokemon. So when you give it the Friend Guard, obviously it does buff it up a bit. But yeah, Calyrex-Shadow once again has won back-to-back massive events, and gotta keep in mind this is a 900 player event, right? Like this is, you know, okay, 898. That's Masters. That's very impressive, right? But yeah, this is not a small event, and Calyrex-Shadow once again shows its dominance. Only 2 in the top 8. But obviously the top 8 here is pretty sped. Obviously three Tropicoses is very good. Only 1 mid Rhydon, which is kind of crazy, and then of course the dog at the Kyogre. But you know, that is what it is. But once again here, we do see Brian Hands once again getting another very good result, getting 2nd place at this event, paired up with Miraidon. And I kind of spoke about it when looking at the Japanese teams. I really like this, right? Because you have this strong Trick Room mode where you're like, hey, I have the Giraffe, right? I have the Brian Hands, and I have Miraidon, right? On this team, this is probably just a max attack Iron Hands. And the gist of it would be like, Miraidon, sure, it can deal damage when it's on the board. But like, you're probably just like setting up the Iron Hands, right? That's kind of what it's there to do, right? You can kind of like, you know, do some funky stuff where you lead Giraffe plus Rhydon, and then you can just like Volt Switch Trick Room, and then bang, your Iron Hands comes in, is pretty safe, and you can start sweeping through. But of course, it also has a very offensive mode, right? We see the Whimsicott plus Urshi Dark, Chiyu, and Miraidon. Kind of reminiscent of what we saw in past formats where you had like Tailwind plus Fluttermane, Urshi Dark, and Chiyu. But yeah, just a very strong offensive combo. And of course, having like the double mode where you can say, hey, I'm going, you know, Tailwind with the top 3 mons, or I'm going Trick Room with the, you know, these 2 plus Miraidon. And of course, Urshi's like actually not that bad in Trick Room as well, just because it's got the sash and it's, you know, a pretty average speed tier. But yeah, a really, really cool team here. I do really, really like a lot of these pieces. One really cool tech that I did like actually is this slot here on the Whimsicott, opting to drop the Protect. Because a lot of people have been running Focus Sash Whimsicott, so dropping Protect for Light Screen and slapping the Cloak on it, I do think is really cool. Especially too, because like Light Screen against like the Calyrex-Shadows and Miraidons, obviously is just super good and really helps out with the matchups. And again, pretty standard draft set here. I do really like the Psychic Noise, you know, stopping some mons from healing. Obviously is never a bad thing. Some of the other teams here, though, we'll take a look at. Of course, Antonia here, pretty standard team here built around the Tropicos. The main real difference, though, is, of course, the Screamtail, which we kind of touched on earlier, having Encore and Disable. Still a really, really cool team here, but yeah, pretty standard. It's got that Fire, Water, Grass core that, you know, we're very used to at this point. Urshi, Rilla, and Incin. Of course, Raging Bolt, just a very, very good glue piece. And Tropicos, just a very solid restricted for sweeping through games. This team here, though, the homie Winter Knight did hit me up about it. Talking about Tornadus, and I think Tornadus right now is actually a really interesting mon, right? Because you can kind of use it as the weather setter, similar to like what Tornadus does. But you also just have the option for Eerie Impulse, which again, very similar to Whimsicott and Light Screen. It can just cripple some special attackers, right? Like if you're going up against Miraidon or Cali, you just Eerie Impulse them, and then it's like, oh, like all of a sudden this mon that like threatens, you know, one shots or at least like, you know, 80%. All of a sudden it just did 40%. And because it didn't break through you on that first turn, you can do it again, and then it really just slows the snowball, which really enables things like your own Calyrex-Shadow to like really start, you know, going crazy, right? Because then you just start plotting up and you just start running through. And yeah, just really, really good, man. Like you've got those bulky pieces we were talking about. You know, you got the Clef, the Incin, the Ruler. Of course, you got the Urshi paired up to make the Fire, Water, Grass. But then Tornadus is that final piece where like it gives you the rain for the Urshi, but it also just gives you Taunt. It gives you, you know, Eerie Impulse, T-Bolt. I do think is just really, really good and really consistent as well, right? This team here, though, this is one of the sauciest teams. This is a team as well. I've got another idea for a video. I kind of mentioned it last video, but I really want to do a team where a video on like some of the weirder teams that have been getting results. And this one's one of them. This is my guy. You know, you got Polteezy here with Focus Sash, Terra Dragon, Dragon Darts, very, very strong, of course. And then just Phantom Force, Sucker Punch, T-Wave. Just having like the second fastest mon in the metagame clicking T-Wave, I think is just super interesting, right? We also have an Ogerpon Wellspring here, dropping the water coverage, which I thought was, sorry, not the water coverage, the grass coverage, which is pretty interesting. But of course, you got the Rillaboom, so you don't necessarily need it. But of course, having the Rillaboom buffs it up even more. So it's like kind of crazy, yeah? But then, of course, you know, you got the standard Incin Rillaboom. We all know what they do together. And then Tropicos plus Comfey. Of course, Comfey is really, really good at keeping the Tropicos alive. Floral healing into it is just fantastic, and we do see Flamethrower as that final option. But yeah, this one was really cool. Comfey has dropped off a lot recently, and my guy Dragapult, Mr. Polteezy, you know, seeing him get some results makes me happy. You know, I got my little Dragapult guy right here. Yeah, he's my guy. I love him. So seeing him get some results there, you know, you love to see it, man. I love to see it. Then here, you know, we have some other, you know, pretty cool teams, right? We got another Kyogre team. This one's pretty standard, though. We have seen very similar variants, recently, right, where you've got the Jugulus as the Tailwind setter. Of course, having Hurricane, I think, is really, really good. But then, you know, Serena, very good, obviously, priority block. Very good matchup into things like Groudon as well. Of course, Fluttermane is just, it's a pretty good mon. Like, this mon is always going to be good. It's a fast mon that hits hard. It can also set Trick Room. Urshi and Rain is good. And, of course, Incin is just Incin, right? It's like the perfect fire type to round out this Fire, Water, Grass cores. Do we need to talk about these two teams? We basically already spoke about this team, I believe, earlier. And of course, just a dog there. Zamazenta is he's finding a way into the top 8 of basically all of these events, which is really, really cool. Of course, this is a pretty offensive team here with Pow. But it is cool to see, right? You've obviously got the AV Bolt here. You've got the Pelipper. Just a cool team, man. You know, shout out to the guy Will Tank. I'm so happy to see Zamazenta getting so much success. Just because obviously Zacian was like, everyone was saying last gen, it's like the most broken Pokemon of all time. And all of a sudden, his brother is actually like performing, you know, a bit better than he is, right? But that's basically it for what they have on here. We'll pull up Top Cut Explorer here, you know, just to have a quick glance. Is there anything super sick? Obviously, Michael Kelch pulling out the same team here as well with the Lati is really cool. Pretty standard stuff here. Is there anything like super crazy I want to look at? We saw this team obviously get top 4, top 8, whatever it was as well. Dude, so much Chiyu. I love to see this, man. Chiyu's my guy. It's so good seeing Chiyu get the results. Yeah, look, I don't see anything too crazy. I might quickly see if there's any stats. Actually, oh, there's something crazy. Okie dokie. I'm going to quickly see if there's any stats on, like, VGC data, and then we might wrap up the video. Yeah, so shout out to VGC data here. Obviously, you know, coming through with the stats here. Obviously, this is just the day 1 restricted, so take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, you know, not everything here does convert to day 2. But of course, Miraidon here has taken the #1 slot, but very, very close with both Cali forms and of course Terapagos. Even the dog is pretty damn close. Sun Team is definitely on the decline. Rain actually getting a little bit more play here than Calyrex 2, I did think was interesting. And of course, the Sword Dog does take the last slot here, but really, I think these are just your 10 best restricteds. I don't really think anything else can kind of force these guys out. Watch me be wrong on day 2 here. And day 2 stays very, very similar. We do see Rain actually continue. More Rain teams than Sun teams on day 2 is actually kind of wild. Obviously, we see a little bit of drop off here from Zama. Lunala definitely on the rise. But the GOAT Calyrex-Shadow, absolutely dominant. Look at this, right? It went from 3rd most used at 12% to day 2 having 30% usage. Absolutely insane. Miraidon does drop to 4th place. Kind of showing that, you know, maybe this guy, he's definitely not mid-Miraidon, but definitely not as good as we thought maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't want to say definitely not, because I think the mod is still incredibly good. But yeah, it definitely shows that Miraidon did its best work when no one was ready for it. So now that people are ready for it, it is slowly starting to drop off just a little bit. But Lunala here being in top 10, I did think was super interesting. Yeah, just, I mean, look, it's a cool mod. It shares a typing here with, of course, Calyrex-Shadow. So yeah, just to see it squeak into the top 5 here, I did think was really, really interesting. Then the day 1 stats for the, you know, the normal mods here, of course, you know, got Insyn dominant at 50%. Fluttermane still, you know, struggling down here at 30. Obviously 30% is not a struggle. It's just, this was a mod that used to have like 50% plus. My guy Chiyu, 20%. You love to see it. Whimsicott and Tornadoes both being top 10 is... Sorry, this is top 12, isn't it? Yeah, top 12. Really, really sick. Brian Hands, though, once again, making an appearance. Pelipper... Dude, Pelipper being like a top 10 non-restricted is insane. Like, it's the second best water type in the format, which is kind of wild. But, yeah, a lot of, you know, normal guys we see here, right? You got the Fire, Water, Grass Core. Literally, this is the top 3 most used mons. Just slap these 3 mons on every team, and you got yourself a team. Bolt as well as, like, that 4th one. You just slap it on a team. Like, honestly, you just take, like, these 4 mons, pick any other one mon here, pick a restricted, and you got yourself a team, boys. Really, really cool. But, of course, the Days 2 usage stats are super interesting because, 1, Rillaboom took over Incineroar, which I thought was kind of crazy. I thought Incin would hold the title as the GOAT. It's lost it. Fluttermane also has fallen behind the real GOAT, Chiyu. Chiyu at 26% usage. You love to see it. But there are 2 Pokemon in particular that made an appearance on this list. And that's Clef. And that's Mienshao. And they are both almost always paired with Cali. And we kind of spoke about it before, but Cali does have a massive usage rate on day 2, 30%, which is pretty damn nice. But yeah, no Whimsicott. Sadly, it did fall off just a little bit. It is one of the ones that got kicked out. And what is the other one that actually got kicked out here? Not Pelipper. Who was it? It wasn't Brian Hands. Oh, Giraffe. Yeah, dude, the fraud Giraffe got kicked out as well. Dude, like, I don't know why people keep playing this mod. Like, I get it, right? Giraffe has a good niche in the metagame. It stops the priority spam, especially out of, like, these 4 mons here in particular. But I don't know. I think that mon's just so mid, but maybe there's something I'm missing. But look, it didn't convert to day 2. So, you know, that's something for me, I guess. But yeah, really cool here. Rillaboom obviously taking over as the better starter, at least for this event, if ever so slightly. And of course, Chiyu beating out Incineroar here in terms of placements, getting 1st and 2nd place, which was really damn cool. I love seeing my fish get results here. That's really sick. And of course, Mienshao and Clef, people started realizing like, hey, they're just probably the 2 best partners for Calyrex-Shadow. Yeah, guys, if you want, play Calyrex-Shadow, put Mienshao and Clef next to it, pick one of the 2 Tailwind setters, and then probably pick some of these guys here. They're all pretty damn good with it. Yeah, I think that's going to be it for this one, guys. Your boy does have to get out of here. I guess let me know down below what you thought of these events as well. Let me know if there's anything you think maybe I left out that I should have covered. And of course, let me know what you think is going to be good at NAIC. As we said at the start of the video, this is going to be the biggest tournament of the year. And obviously, the final tournament before Worlds, so it's going to be super interesting. Yeah, anyway, guys, that's it. Catch you in the next one. Peace.